And I've been a recreational therapist for 35 years now. Wow. 35 years.
Could you explain?
I'm not that old.
Could you explain what a recreational therapist does?
Yeah, so a recreational therapist is just like an OT or PT or a KT, except that we use recreational activities to bring about functional change. So as an example, let's say that you have a patient who needs to work on balance. He, especially dynamic balance. He is able to walk, but he has to use a walker to maintain his balance, that kind of thing. And let's say he also happens to enjoy playing basketball. He's not likely to go out and start shooting hoops right away since he has to use a walker. So what we might do is utilize that activity of basketball, and we would first go to the basketball court, and with a gate belt around him and his walker also standing in front of him, we might just have him shoot the ball and try to hit, and we might even lower the hoop, we might not, but shoot the ball and work on that. And I'm hanging onto the gate belt, and he's also got his walker where he can grab hold of it. And we'll do that for a while as he begins to get that dynamic balance. And over probably several sessions, we'll move from where maybe I'm no longer holding on to the gate belt to where he's not even got the walker in front of him. Maybe we start playing a game of horse, the two of us, and then finally moving, hopefully, if we can get that far, of him not needing the walker. Maybe we're actually playing one-to-one and basketball. Now, oftentimes you don't actually get that far, but you will see an improvement in his balance over that time. Even if he ends up still having to use the walker, he won't trip over every little thing or that kind of stuff. There'll be an improvement over time. And we can utilize any recreational activity that will bring about a change in whatever skills that activity needs. So if you break down any sort of activity, no matter what it is, even if it's something as simple as petting a dog, you break that down into, okay, to pet a dog, you have to reach out with your hand, you have to pull your hand back, so therefore you need some muscle strength, you need some range of motion, this, that, and the other thing. You can then look at all of those skills that you need to do that and begin to improve those skills with that activity.
Okay. How do you establish relationship with patients?
The way I go about it is to begin to find common ground. And because I'm a recreational therapist, it's relatively, it's a straightforward, what do you like to do kind of thing. I have to ask that anyway as part of my assessment, but then he's able to start to tell me what he enjoys doing, what he doesn't enjoy doing, and that can just lead into natural conversation like it normally would of, So you like to fish. Tell me about the last time you went fishing. You like to do this, you like to do that. Tell me about a little bit more about that. And we can begin to develop that rapport over just the typical conversation of what do you like to do. I then begin to develop into, well, do you think you can still do that? Yes, no. If you do, then that's great. If not, then I can start to explain, well, how could you still do it? And over time, over a little bit of time, we begin to develop a rapport. I also find one of the things that recreation therapy does is we take people from the hospital or the clinic out into the real world to see how their skills are working for them. And I find that naturally leads to some rapport because they have to place their trust in me while they're out in the community, that I'm going to keep them safe. And consequently, usually on the way back, on the way there, we talk about what we're going to do, that kind of thing. On the way back, they begin to open up about all kinds of stuff that they wouldn't normally open up about because we just did something that they placed their life in my hands one way or another. And of course, the more they have to trust me, the more they open up. So if we're just going to grab a burger at McDonald's, they don't open up as much as if I'm taking them downhill skiing and I'm the tetherer while they're in some sort of adaptive device, and I'm the one keeping them safe while they're learning how to ski, they're going to open up a whole lot more. I typically call that van therapy on the way back, because we all kinds of discussion where I have to drive, therefore I'm not looking at them, and they feel like they can totally open up and ask all kinds of questions and develop all kinds of rapport. The other way with my patients that will tell me things like, I don't want to, go away, leave me alone, those kinds of things, if I just be the person that doesn't force them to do anything and sits down and listens to them, then they'll begin to open up. I've had many patients that they refuse me. I let them refuse a couple of days, and then I will ask them, so why not? What's going on? And they tell me, they start in, because I'm willing to listen, they start in with how the whole world sucks, how every staff person there is lousy, how everybody is making them do what they don't want to do, how nobody thinks they're an adult, etc., etc. And I just listen to it all and let them get it all off their chest. And afterwards I say, so you want to try this or not?
Right.
And sometimes they'll say, okay, I'll try it. Other times, well, not that, but how about this other thing? I'll try that for you. And by then, because I'm willing to listen to them and treat them like an adult, and yeah, you want to try it or not, then they're, okay, well, I'll try something for you just because you listened to me,
Right.
if no other reason.
Nice. Okay, can you explain a little bit how you heard about recreational therapy and what caused you to pursue it as a career?
I actually thought I was developing a brand new field. I didn't realize it already existed. At the time I was involved in medical research, had been involved in neurological research, ophthalmological research, and at the time I switched over to RT, was in respiratory diseases and pulmonary research. And I was in Seattle on the 13th floor of a large research building, and it overlooked a cut that went from one lake to another, and I would see people canoeing back and forth, or kayaking back and forth, and rowing and out on their boats, and I'd see mountains off to that side and mountains off to that side, and think about people out there skiing, and think there has got to be a way that I can combine medicine and being out there, whatever it is out there, being out there. And I then remembered when I was in college, in high school and college, I taught disabled kids how to swim. It was by total accident. A person with a child with cerebral palsy happened to bring her to me to teach her how to swim, and I became known as the person who could teach disabled kids how to swim. And I thought, well, maybe I could do something along that line. And I looked around as to what I could do, did some research about it, and found this thing called therapeutic recreation or recreational therapy, and found an individual in my city who was doing that. Went and interviewed her, and discovered that indeed she was doing exactly what I thought, and this thing I thought I was going to create actually existed and had for about 30 years. And that's when I went back to grad school then, and got my degree and went back out and started practicing.
Nice. So do you prefer working with a certain demographic, specific age group, disease, injury, and why?
Well, most of my career I've worked with veterans, but that's only because I got into the VA. I love veterans, and I think that it's a wonderful group of people. So yes, I like working with adult males. At the same time, I've also worked with females and kids and so on and so forth. So there's not many populations I don't enjoy. Most of my career has been with physical disability, but I've also worked with mental health. In the physical disability realm, I tend to like neurological disabilities best. Whether it's spinal cord, TBI, stroke, I tend to like that best. And in the mental health realm, I tend to work best with folks with PTSD. And I don't know if it's because of the interventions or I can't really tell you exactly why I prefer it. I do know that when I was in high school and thinking about what do I want to do with my life, I was going to either be a neurosurgeon or a research neurologist was my intention back then. Maybe that's why I still like neuro, just because of that. And then the behavioral aspect of neurology is also what I enjoy. In my volunteer work, I do a lot of outdoor recreation activities with a variety of populations, and I still tend to gravitate towards physical disability and some mental health disability versus developmental disabilities or that kind of thing. So I still gravitate towards the physical disability and some of the mental health disabilities, even in my volunteer work. So I would say that that's probably. I do love working with kids, and I don't know if I would enjoy that as a career, or if I love working with kids because I work with adult men for the most part. And I love working with women, although before I got into the VA, I was working in a nursing home where it was mainly women, and I didn't enjoy that so much. Now I love it, but I don't know if it's because 95% of my population is male, and so I love getting the occasional female.
Yeah.
Or if it's even a different female population, because your typical female veteran is different from, especially a more elderly female veteran, is a different than the general female population is.
Okay. So what made you decide recreational therapy over physical therapy, since they consist of similar goals to rehabilitate patients and improve physical well-being?
Physical therapy, I've shadowed a couple of physical therapists, and I actually got bored in physical therapy. It felt like they were doing the same things day in, day out, patient in, patient out. It was all transfers, exercise, some massage and manipulation, various modalities like ultrasound and that kind of thing. And that was it. Whereas with recreation therapy, I'm pretty much able to do anything I want. In physical therapy, I wasn't taking people downhill skiing, and I do in recreation therapy. I didn't go do equine therapy, which is working with horses and patients, and I do in recreation therapy. When I shadowed the PT, they didn't never bring in dogs. I used dogs all the time in my therapy. They didn't go out into the community for the most part. I do most of my therapy in the community as opposed to in the clinic or in the hospital. Even just developing rapport, I'll pull out a board game, and you don't do that in PT. Also, when you talk to the patients, you'll hear them say PT is pure torture, OT is other torture,